shake, rattle, and troll.
It's time for the award-winning Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Yeah, kiss the wife, grab your favorite pose. Me and the boys gonna shake.
A show for the serious fishermen as well as the novice looking for tips from the pro.
We got the power, we got the speed. We're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Freshwater, saltwater, watch out, boys. Bass Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. It's me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and tournament pro, Don McDowell.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm Don McDowell. Welcome to Shake, Rattle, and Troll this morning. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And we've got a lot of stuff to go over today. The man who speaks to elk is actually talking to the fireplace in Michigan. And then for JK, our good friend Kurt Davis is co-hosting with me today. I appreciate you coming down. Where's your jacket? yeah.
I had an elk hunt. I got acclimated.
Oh yeah. I talked to JK. You know, he's trying to stay out of Dearborn with all the Sharia law going on, and looking for his jacket and trying to build a fire in a fireplace that they don't have. So it's all good.
He told me my job is to be the voice of reason today, Don. So.
Voice of moderation and reason.
That's right.
You know, you do a good job at that. So I appreciate it. Let's see, what do we got going on? The breaking news, I guess we'll start with that, is up on the White Mountain Apache Nation has had a tribal 3-2 with 2 abstention votes to remove the Mexican gray wolves from the landscape. What do you say?
Well, I think it's probably, a sign of the, frustration that many of the entities have had to deal with the federal government on this program, and I'm sure that this is another one of the offshoots of that, Don. It's just a reality of sometimes quote unquote partners who are difficult to deal with, and there's a lot, as you know, going on in that world with New Mexico and legal cases and awaiting a long-awaited and long overdue, illegally overdue plan that was supposed to have been done years ago, that it supposedly will have a draft plan in the fall of 17.
That's crazy. Let me ask you this from a political standpoint. It appears to me, and obviously, we're on the outside, the periphery of this. Sherry Barrett's not being really transparent. There's a lot of complaints from the meeting that was supposed to be a public meeting, that the calls and the notifications and emails that I'm getting, they didn't see, the constituency didn't see any publication like they normally do. So there was, the folks up there in Young and Payson and that area feel like it was kind of a clandestine meeting. And then there was another one down in Tucson. I think it was probably a little bit more publicized with the Mexican government being present, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, that's important. Ultimately, if you take the issue itself, and no matter where you sit on the issue of the reintroduction, if one wants reintroduction to be successful, the fact of the matter is that 90% of the historic habitat and range of the wolf is in Mexico. So there is no way to legitimately restore the Mexican gray wolf without a robust program in Mexico.
Oh, you have to have it.
Otherwise, it's Jurassic Park science. It's not real.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not real. It has to occur, 90% of it in Mexico, if one believes in truly scientifically restoring that creature to its historic range.
Well, I think we on our side of the fence, there's, I can't talk to anybody without, this thing coming up, and there are some guys on the radical left side of the hook and bullet community, and no wolves, no how, and I think we're moving beyond that. There's a place on the landscape for all of God's creatures, and I get that. I've talked about that at length, and it just seems that the federal promises keep getting broken. It's almost like we go back to the Bill Clinton era with trying to define the word management as opposed to him trying to define the word is. And, we've got Wolf F-1437 that is guilty of at least 12 predations, maybe 13, convicted on 9 of them for sure. And we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with the wolf. The department doesn't want to go get it for social outcry. The department doesn't want it, or the service doesn't want it. I mean, nobody wants to go deal with this wolf right now.
Well, again, when you're in a multi-headed hydra situation of management, if we go back to the roots of our country and we go back to the roots of the North American model of wildlife conservation, we go back to the roots of how our forefathers intended wildlife management to occur. They intended it to be led and operated by the states. Because, as you know, wildlife is held in trust in each state for the people of that state. And so when you get into this situation where in many ways nobody is in charge, you're creating a system that won't be successful. And one of the things that hopefully will come out of a plan is that, long term, is how do we make sure that there is a driver on this issue, and the driver should be the state, and the states in this case. Those should be the drivers of a successful program.
What happens January 21st?
Well, I mean, obviously I don't think a lot will happen actually on the 21st.
I'm using that as a...
yeah, I know euphemism. I think there's a real opportunity to work with the new administration to level set how wildlife is managed and managed most successfully. You've heard me talk about this all the time, Don. The federal government in reality are bit players in wildlife conservation. The states collectively spend 5 times what the federal government does on wildlife conservation. And so you need to go where the money is in the ability to actually manage the wildlife. And what I'm hopeful is that a new administration will do large block granting of those federally collected revenues back to the states so that they can more effectively conserve wildlife. And I think if we can get to that place, we will see a remarkable improvement in all species management, not any just particular single species.
Well, I'm looking for some change coming out of EPA. They've been a pretty degrading factor on conservation efforts, and with Scott Pruitt, the former Attorney General from Oklahoma, has had his rounds with EPA, and rumor has it he's going to be like the Darth Vader to the other side of the fence, the enviro litigants, as J.K. would call them. Ryan Zinke, Republican congressman from Montana. Any thoughts on him moving into Department of Interior?
I think he's a very solid choice. He comes, he knows the issues. He comes from an affected state.
Absolutely, yeah.
That deals with a myriad of these agencies, as you described another one, the EPA. So, and he also understands how the Hill functions, how Washington functions. That's one of the things that I've actually been really pleasantly surprised and hopeful about many of the decisions being made by President-elect Trump, which is, it's one thing, and I know it's fun to talk about, quote unquote, draining the swamp and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you have to have people that understand how Washington works, because Washington's not going to change overnight.
No.
I think he will make profound changes in Washington, but they will take 4 years or 8 years.
Absolutely. It takes forever to get anything done back there.
It's taken a long time to get this sick, and it's going to take a long time to heal.
Well, I'm encouraged by the fact that the most of the folks that I've talked to working with the Trump team during the campaign process and most recently the Trump transition team, they seem to get it. Whether Donald Trump gets it or not, he's going to get it. Because I know people are talking to him that, conservation doesn't happen without hunters and anglers. It just doesn't happen. The other side isn't putting anything on the landscape, in the landscape, or on the water, other than going to court. This past week we're looking at the cormorant issue, and lo and behold, we can't do anything because of why? There's a lawsuit. No, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And, it's going to be interesting to see, some of the roadblocks. Hopefully they'll disappear with the service and, Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers, God love them, they're trying to manage cormorants, and now they're getting hammered. They can't do that because of the left. It's like, wait a minute, the wolf issue, the cormorants, the buffalo, the parks, it's like we're under attack from all sides. Anyway. That said, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some fishing stuff on the front. I'm Don McDowell with
Kurt Davis.
Yes, you are. We'll be right back. All righty, we're back. My wingman today, Kurt Davis. You're here on just the guy capacity.
Yes, sir. As your voice of moderation.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, no. Hey, on the second hour we've got.
J.K. was very worried, Don.
Oh, he's panicking. He's been on the phone this morning. Going, is Kurt there yet? Are you going to be able to keep him under control? I go, why would I? Anyway, our Attorney General, Mark Brnovich, is coming down, for the second hour. We're talking about this, that, and the other thing from, conservation standpoint. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the CBD, bless their little hearts, have now assaulted the Pacific bluefin. They want a moratorium on it. That started last year. The SAC, the Southern California Sport Fishing Association, fired back at them, and it kind of went away. But apparently they've refiled, and a bunch of the guys over on the West Coast are really hammering them.
So, is there any California agency that has requested any change?
We've got the press release, and I'll give this to you. In fact, most of the attack, fortunately, went to NOAA. They last year, early on in the sports season, they came out with some absurd comment that the average bluefin being caught was like 40 plus pounds. The reality of it is it's like 18 or 20 pounds, and the numbers are significantly less. According to the recent information that was fired back at NOAA and the left wings, is only 1.5% of the bluefins caught are by recreational anglers, which includes all the sport fleets.
Right.
Malahini boat was one of those that we're going down through the science, and I understand we have to have the science, but they were logging how many anglers they had per day, converting that into angler days, angler hours, what the bluefin catch was, then what the average weight was. So it's going to be interesting to see. We're kicking in that fight as well. It's just absolutely crazy. And we understand the methods of management over on the Atlantic side, but there's two different genomes over there. They're related. We've got the left coast, the east coast, and the Atlantic bluefin management is they're almost micromanaged, and I get that, and they're bringing the species back. It's just crazy. So anyway, we're going to be following that along.
Well, you always have to follow the money. And,
you do.
And in this case, I'm sure they're looking for a substantial legal payback. and reimbursement, which is part of their funding model, unfortunately. And
For now.
Yeah, for now. And second to that is, again, there's a disparity or a difference between sport fishing and commercial fishing, and lopping together those two forms of fishing and doing one size fits all approaches is, unfortunate as you kill attempt to kill one of the nation's largest economic drivers, which is sport fishing.
Well, the heartburn I have with these guys is, they sit behind their desk and their computers, take shots at everybody on the planet. They need to get their butts out there and see what's going on. Right. From a fishing standpoint. We see other countries coming in, Japan, certainly right. Mexico. They've got a quasi agreement. They've got tuna farms out there where they're catching the bluefin, putting them in a processing area. It's kind of like rounding up cows. They're going to herd them all into here, and here comes a factory ship. And it's not uncommon. One of the big issues is the United States doesn't enforce a 100-mile limit.
Right.
Territorial waters. It's like 12.
Right.
12. I mean, Catalina Island's 26 miles away.
Right.
It's not protected. Go figure. But that's just a, pretty loose analogy. But Mexico, they're enforcing 100 miles, 200 miles when they feel like it, if their boats can get that far. It's crazy. So, we're seeing all kinds of things out there on the water. It's like going out on the landscape. These guys aren't out there.
Yeah. Well, the lawsuits, as you know, the repeated lawsuits end up with generic approaches to conservation, and most of them are highly ineffectual. As we become more litigious, then common sense dies a little bit more every day, and we have to get back to where we use scientists working with people on the seas, on the ground. The common thing that most people want is they want our species, God's creatures, to endure. And so how do we ensure that happens? And there's reasonable approaches to making sure that happens. And sometimes that may be getting tough with foreign governments.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely.
And we can do that. And I think now, again, we have leadership in the White House that may be more responsive to getting tough with foreign governments related to conservation of sea and land creatures.
Oh, absolutely. Like I was talking about, the Atlantic bluefin is highly regulated, and I get that. The swordfish are being regulated as well because they went on a big giant decline. And one of the things we've been talking about for a number of years now is trying to create some type of and I hate to even suggest another regulation or a surcharge or a permit or a license, but for the guys that are creating all the problems, it's like the hunters and the fishermen. We pay our license fee, we pay our tag fees, and we're out there buying stuff, and that comes back to us through the either the DJ money, the PR money. But having some kind of a user base for hikers, birders, guys who just want to go out and pick flowers, that type of thing. Do you see that in the future, 2017, 18?
There's conversations, I think, at the national level about potentially a PJ type funding mechanism vis-a-vis other pieces of equipment.
Well, we've suggested even a surcharge on Starbucks. If you buy a Starbucks for $4.98, you get charged another 10%. We'll send that to the department.
I think that conversation on the federal level is appropriate and a good one. At the same time, I'm optimistic though that if you lay out the issue to the public, and I'm talking about in a real way, not in a small way, in a very large way, a national way, a White House driven way, there's an opportunity to create voluntary funding sources or discretionary funding sources. I do. I believe people will
as opposed to a state level.
Anytime what I hate is I'm like you. I hate when you just prescribe new fees and licenses.
Sure.
I think the opportunity to generate more revenue vis-a-vis people's want for conservation to work can be achieved. We've just never had, quite frankly, the money to really reach out to the masses, to effectively reach out to the masses. And so I think if we invest in that the return will be good.
Okay, federal level versus state level. If we get the feds involved, bless their hearts, it's going to take them forever to do anything.
Yeah.
I don't think you and I are going to live long enough to see it happen, as opposed to giving it to the state and saying, "Hey, look,
well, yeah, no,
here's what we need to do." I mean, we've got way too many federal partnerships.
It could be absolutely implemented at the state level. Don't get me wrong on that. I think, though, that if you're looking at a quick fix, the broadening of the base of that tax base that we tax items for the outdoors is something that should be considered, because you and I are paying that now. Just broaden the source of it.
Hold that thought. When we come back, I want to tell you about a pig memorial. Have you heard about that?
I've not heard about that.
Unbelievable.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
This is not the end. We're actually in the middle. But that's a good thing. All right.
Although the Doors on a Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah. I was talking with our good friend Congressman Paul Gosar, and he's just tearing up the halls. He's earned the nickname the Hound of the Hall. And when he gets back to work, there'll be a box of milk buns on his desk from unknown sources here in Arizona. But I told him, I said, what occurs to me is, and I never thought I'd see this happen, but the 60s came back. Okay, look, Panama Red moved to Colorado. Okay, so we know where he is. Okay, tie-dye T-shirts are back. Bell-bottom denim jeans are back. You can buy those at Walmart, for heaven's sakes. And then the same guys that were doing a protest in the 60s about Vietnam and whatever else they had, they're doing a protest in Congress, the Democrats on the floor. We've made this big circle. They just moved from here to D.C.
History always repeats itself.
It does.
But maybe for your next guest, I think you probably need a little bit of Grateful Dead for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
I think he's a fan.
I wanted to tell you that PETA, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, is up in arms. In the Virgin River Gorge, there were a number of pigs that were killed in a traffic accident, and now they are calling for a pig memorial. Yeah. Do you believe that?
I guess I believe anything anymore, Don, but maybe they should focus on having a memorial for the pigeons that were used to help win World War I.
Nice.
Those are all would be my more appropriate monument.
In memory of the pigs who suffered and died at the spot October 16th. Try bacon.
So they're upset because they were being taken to market?
Apparently. Anyway,
that's in the rhyme. This little piggy went to the market.
Well, yeah. They're defiling our heritage. Unbelievable. Let's talk a little bit about the elk hunt opportunities year-round up in northern part of Arizona, up on the Strip.
It's exciting. The commission has approved. And by the way, I do want to caveat this with a really big star. Do not put in for this hunt because your bonus points would be used. But it will be a draw hunt, but assuming that the tags are not all drawn, which I think there's a high likelihood, there will be then tags available over the counter for units 13 and 12. And the permit will basically be from April 1 through December 31st, and it will be any elk, and it will be $35 whether you're a resident or a non-resident. And the conservation purpose is we've seen some growth of the elk herds in those two units, and as you know, that's not the range that people anticipate elk to be in.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
And it has negative consequences for all kinds of other wildlife. So the department is attempting to aggressively manage those herds up there. And so it's, it'll be a nice permit to be able to get, especially if you live in that area or you live in southern Utah as well, because it's like I said, $35 whether you're a resident.
Yeah,
or
that's
unresident.
kind of a buzz in southern Utah. It's a good opportunity for those guys to sneak across the border.
Yeah. Well, and on a turkey hunt up there, which I do every year, that'll be fun to have that permit with you. I have personally seen elk up there during the turkey hunts.
Really?
And there are not many. Be a tough hunt. That's why I wouldn't certainly use bonus points.
No.
For that tag, but it's a great opportunity to carry a tag, and if you're one of those lucky few, or you're willing to work at it,
sure.
There's some elk up there.
What are you hearing about feral hogs up there? I know you hunt up in the Kaibab in northern Arizona. It's a great place to hunt. Any recent cognitions we're hearing? Well,
you've been actually the voice on this for a number of years about the growth of these populations around the state.
They're coming.
And I think it's, you put it on the list now with burros as critters that are having a negative consequence on the habitat, and they need to be managed. And so, they are an invasive species. And because of, a lot of your work, and I know you've been out actually documenting.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is a moment, your listeners, and I'm sure many of them know, but there's nobody that commits more time to conservation in our state than Don McDowell. Every time I talk to Don, he's either on a road trip to meet with congressmen. He spends a lot of time not only with our delegation, but with members of other delegations, the Western Caucus. You don't get enough recognition, Don, for the work and the time you put in on your dime. I know you don't. I know you're not making a penny. By the way, I need to be your agent and you need to start being paid on occasion for.
You are hired.
For all the work that you do. And this is one of those issues. Again, without Don McDowell, quite frankly, I don't think most people would have any idea of the severe growth. As you know, in our wildlife refuge, the federal refuge on the Colorado River, Havasu, that's a massive growing problem.
It is.
And the habitat's being destroyed. And what's the purpose of that refuge?
Habitat.
Yeah. And so,
not free-range bacon.
Free-range bacon, absolutely. So anywhere this is occurring, it's happening in 6A, it's happening in 12, it's happening
5B.
in 13, 5B.
Yeah.
This is a real problem.
It's almost statewide. We talked to the folks, and first of all, I had to get educated on this thing. And we're looking at Texas. Texas talks about sport hog hunting, and Ted Nugent went to their state legislature and got aerial gunning approved, which is, if you think about it, that's just fun stuff for some of us. But the populations are such, and these things are so prolific. Let's say the last known count in Texas was right at the 4 million number, a little more. But the sport hunters harvest approximately. Stay with me on these numbers because this is scary. About 25% of the population annually. In order to keep the constant population of 4 million, they would have to harvest 60 to 70%.
Right.
That's virtually impossible.
And I think that's why by you sounding the bell on this issue, if Arizona, and as you know, they're not wildlife, so they have to be managed as an invasive species.
Well, they crossed the border into New Mexico, and I think New Mexico's waited long enough that
got a firm toehold there.
They've got a firm hold, and I don't think New Mexico is going to be able to barbecue their way out of this feral hog problem. And then, if you look at the range, and you can just see a migratory pattern from mid-Texas across New Mexico. Now they're sneaking across the border in southeastern Arizona.
Right.
Go figure.
And I think
maybe we need to build a wall.
And the other question to this is and I'm not sure anybody really has a firm handle on what disease presence do they provide.
I have that in a number of different things. I can get it to you.
Yeah,
it's all clearly defined. There's a capture method that we learned about for some Georgia boys, actually, and went and saw how they do it. The whole thing's laid out, and we had a grant writer that unfortunately sent it to the Pew Foundation, which is pretty anti, let's say. But that was in her calling. She's bless her heart, she wants to save all the wolves, and she wants you and I to have to take a wolf home. And anyway, the whole thing's laid out, and we were denied, and finally not necessarily gave it up, but we're off on some other fronts. But trying to implement a study program. In fact, the department's ranch right up off the Bloody Basin Road. We've talked about this around Dugas and
right.
Indian Creek and
where there's some of the
there's feral hogs there, and I fully expect them to just explode. Because the bad part about these guys is they're nocturnal. We're not normally out in the field with lights trying to shoot stuff. Josh Hurst kind of keeps a rein on that, but they're very difficult to find in the daytime. Hardly ever, unless you happen to stumble across them, and then setting up at nighttime, trying to see these guys takes technologically a lot of dollars with your night goggles, night vision, infrared, and this guy, and the average guy's not set up for it.
Right.
I mean, it's a pricey bit of work. So, we will come back. We have one guy to tell you about. We don't have any fallen law enforcement or military officers. Thank goodness, for the first time in a long time. But anyway, I'll be back with
Kurt Davis.
I'm Don McDowell. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Last night I heard this politician talking about his brand new mission. Liked his plans, but they came undone when he got around to goddamn gun.
All righty, we're back. I think we're getting warmed up for the Attorney General to come in with that one. Good news, Josh. Let's hope he's in a good mood.
Good pick for a Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Let's just get back to this feral hog thing just a little bit. Is there any thing from interdepartment discussions with New Mexico or some of the other states? These things will sneak across the border. Is Utah looking at it at all?
That, Don, I do not know, and I promise you I will follow up and get that information. I'm not that up to speed.
I can put in a call to Mike Styler. He's their executive director of the Utah DNR. Nice guy. Really a nice guy, and he gets it. I know he's been working with the department on some of the northern Arizona, Utah water-related issues with fishes. Nice guy. We've gotten calls from, we've got a feral hog hotline, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yes.
But we do. As close as Australia Mountains.
Ferals.
Yeah, and we're thinking, okay, Australia Mountains, Buckeye, hog farms, farmers, I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff up in Show Low, there's quite a few Snowflake, Show Low area hog farms, and they have escapees.
Sure.
And they get loose, and for years and years and years, we've heard about hogs in 5B area, Jack's Canyon and stuff up there.
Right.
As late as day before yesterday, we were talking to a guy that was hunting up in 5B and 5B. And he's talking about, oh my God, I thought it was a bear, but it had spots.
Yeah.
I said, just shoot it? He goes, I didn't know what it was.
Well, I remember you and I first met, I had seen one completely by accident in 6A. It was one of those shocking kind of, you don't expect to see it, especially in the day, like you said. But yeah, when you and I first met, I think it was shortly after you and I first met, I happened to be out and was crawling under some trees looking for javelina and ran into.
That was a big one.
Yes, it was exactly. It was
Yeah.
a very, very large feral hog, not far from Dugas.
Really? Really? Did you get a shot at it?
No, by the time I was done falling over backwards and
Oh, yeah.
getting my sorts back,
Yes.
he or she was long gone. But I spent about 3 days trying to find
Oh,
him again.
man.
But talk about a ghost. They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, they're, I have to give them credit. They're, once they go feral, they're pretty wily.
Mm-hmm.
They're not real smart in a pig pen on the farm, but I'll tell you what, we've hunted them on Santa Cruz, Catalina Island over there, and they're formidable, or can be, especially the ones on Santa Cruz. They became pretty carnivorous. Them being an omnivore is one thing, but we were over there on sheep extermination hunts, firearms. That wasn't. It was a conservation effort trying to save the island. The sheep, pretty prolific. There were just a zillion of them. An extermination. I think 9 of us in a day and a half harvested 707 sheep, certified kills, and the hogs just come in and clean up whatever's left, the carrion.
And I think that's one of the things that, from a management standpoint, is really fully understanding, because of that behavior, are there other disease presents that they could be potentially transferring?
There's a whole list of things that they carry.
Right.
Definitely.
But the more that kind of behavior goes on, what does that long-term mean for the spread and carry of other diseases?
Sure.
Maybe some we haven't even contemplated yet or seen yet. If they run it, if that's what the nature of that beast becomes, then we've got a whole other scientific problem.
Well, I think that's one thing that makes them such an issue. They're like a coyote. Coyotes are just absolutely everywhere for one reason: they're adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
And the pigs
are adaptable.
Yeah, if you and I learn to eat everything or whatever, not care what we eat, just fill up the empty spots, we're good. And I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see the evolution of thing. We've got the hogs are one thing. We've got burros loose all over the place. The wild horses loose all over the place, trying to protect this snake, that snake, and we've got new jaguars coming into the state, and we've got a ride and drive set up with our southern border patrol friends. I talked to them last week. Doug and I are going to go down there in January and do a ride and drive with them. I'm not interested in seeing the detention facility or this or that facility. I want to be in the trench, in the truck with these guys, because we've got about 24,000 square miles, give or take a little bit, beyond a demarcation line on the Game and Fish Hunt map that, look, if you're hunting below this line,
right,
be careful.
Right.
I get that. At the same time, we've got guys sneaking across the border. We've got feral hogs down there. We've got reduced hunting opportunity, I think.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is pinpoint from a hands-on, the guys in the field, in the trench, like we're talking to, is what areas do we need to really be cautious of? Is it 45A? Is it 36A and B, where, Rio Rico used to go down there and hunt?
And then, as you know, Don, you also have the other issue of monuments and wilderness, which also impact the department's ability to manage wildlife.
That's the next thing that's coming. This past week in Utah, there was a big flap. Senator Lee, Mike Lee, and Congressman Chris Stewart were on their NBC counterpart in Utah. Obama's probably going to hit Bears Ear. If he does that, we're going to get the Grand Canyon Monument. We'll probably get Sedona. We'll probably get Sonoran, which is a couple of million acres. And
I'm feeling a little more optimistic about the Grand Canyon right now.
Really?
I am. I think the sportsmen, the commission, Senators Flake and McCain, Congressman Gosar, the governor, have articulated a very strong message related to the Grand Canyon watershed, the proposed monument. And I think that, and this is one of those rare instances Washington may be listening. There is, significant opposition for great reasons to that designation, and the clock is running out. Those designations require a lot more backroom work in advance than people realize. It's not simply the president signing use of the Antiquities Act.
He's got 34 days left.
Correct, and there's a basis of those being declared. So I know that strong unified message among the vast majority of sportsmen and the commission and the governor and Congressman Gosar and Senator McCain and Senator Flake and Governor Ducey and the Chamber of Commerce this week, obviously reiterating the Arizona Chamber of Commerce reiterating their opposition. This is a case where there is very strong unified opposition from groups who have a long tradition of supporting conservation in our state and making the case appropriately that designation will actually damage conservation.
It will.
And it will.
Absolutely.
The North Kaibab will burn to the ground.
Bam. Game over.
If a monument is designated in that area.
And the Strip, we've got 2 mule deer herds that aren't replicated anywhere in the lower 40, anywhere on the planet. And
if anybody wants to see the difficulty up close is trying to manage our bison that wander into the park, and the ability to get the park to partner with the Game and Fish Department to manage that herd is an endless, mind-numbing process.
It is, yeah.
And that's exactly what would happen if there's a monument declared on the North Kaibab.
Speaking of the buffalo, any movement on that one? Or expected movement after January 20th?
It's one of those, every time a step forward is taken, then it seems a step backward is taken. Everything is fine as far as the department/commission's recommendations on how to manage that herd. And there's some great ideas that the department wants to implement to create genetic memory of the bison in outside the park, back down in their original ranch, and so that provides a great opportunity to reestablish that herd where it traditionally resided. But now, as you know, we have a new superintendent up on the park. We have a change in administration, which I'm hopeful will finally force the hand of the park to allow what we've been calling for, which is citizen, they like to refer to as citizen hunting. I refer to it as having a traditional hunt on the north side of the park there, which that will be the most effective way to manage that herd, which is now approaching 600, which needs to be about 200.
What was interesting was when this all started, there was less than 400.
Yeah, and here we go. Again, if the objective is to manage those creatures appropriately, we need to be, in that 200, 250 range. We can get a population that understands that House Rock is its home, and we can manage most of them down there. Hunting will do what it's intended to do, which is to manage the herd. And that's what we need to be given the ability to do, and we got to get the Park Service, quite frankly, to quit diddle-daddling. And we're currently in the middle of an EIS and all that, and that process. And hopefully those recommendations will come out that they want to partner with, and again, I guess I'm being hopeful that they'll want to partner with the department to have an effective management plan.
Let's take that under advisement.
I think the big man just came in the house.
Yep, we'll take it to a higher authority at 8:03. I'm Don McDowell.
I'm Kurt Davis.
And the AG is in the house. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll kick it hard. We'll be right back.
Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
All right, we're back. Hey, thanks for joining the second hour of Shake, Rattle, and Troll. Kurt Davis is in for JK
the
with
voice of moderation.
You're doing well. I especially like the part where, if since you were reelected, there's going to be a buffalo in every freezer and a horse in every backyard. Woo! Pigs on the landscape. I got it. We have Mark Brunovich, our Attorney General, in the house today. I appreciate you coming down. Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much, Don. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to Mr. Davis here.
Merry Christmas,
Mr. Davis.
General.
I got to call him Mr. Davis.
No, or we like to call him KD.
There you go.
The original KD.
Yep. I like it. You know anything about his elk hunt?
Don't be surprised me with trick questions. I thought it was bad enough that you made me disassemble a Colt 45 blindfolded when I arrived here today to prove my bona fides. So,
you can do it. That's conducive with that NATO camouflage you're wearing there.
Yes, I need to. If anyone out there can hook me up with some camouflage from Rhodesia in the 1970s, the Cell of Scouts. That's what my next. That's my next goal on my camouflage collection. So.
I was up at Lookout Mountain the other day. Joey Knox is up there, and he's got some interesting stuff. It's a very unique place. He has a lot of stuff on consignment from guys like us that have a garage full of stuff, and you go like, "What? I'm going to take it to Joey's. I might get $2 for it." He had some Polish canteens.
Oh wow!
Aluminum with the little fuzzy wool covers. They're absolutely awesome. It's got some great stuff. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he had a British 303 bolt action Enfield up there. Anyway, so how do you and I get an elk tag in the state of Arizona?
You know that there's a process for that, and there's a draw, and it's very, very difficult.
I think you and I have to wait 8 years. How many in a row have you had?
I got my first one in 6 years. This was
Really?
my first one. Yeah.
So you're part of the populace.
Yes, I am definitely. It wasn't. Trust me, it wasn't my first choice. It was a late rifle hunt. You know me. I'm a black powder guy.
Oh yeah.
But I did a community service. I had one.
Was that court appointed by the Attorney General? Nice.
No,
Way to go.
I want to make sure we're absolutely clear, Don. I have no influence or say over this, and it is completely random. Yeah.
It is random, and I'm proof of it. But because it would not be the one that I chose, but it was a lot of fun, Don. Other than I provided a community service by finding a really beautiful 6x6 that I tracked for about 2 months, and on opening morning, I did a great job of pushing him right to another hunter. So it's my community service to the state of Arizona.
Bless your heart.
He's a giver, not a taker. That's what they say. I'm just
good.
waiting for the buffalo hunt. That's the one that
You and me both.
That's the hunt of a lifetime. That's the one I want to do.
I went to the a number of government websites because they start talking about government sharpshooters. There's no place to sign up for a sharpshooter.
Yeah,
I'm 1,000 meter qualified.
Wow.
Okay.
But there's no place for you to sign up on the federal website.
No.
Right.
I don't know if that's.
Well, I think the commission opposes that we have many, as they call them, we have many qualified citizen hunters.
I just wanted to be ready if it went south and they were going to have, government sharpshooters. I wanted to be one.
Yeah. I can imagine what that process will be.
That is an interesting question. I have no idea. I really don't.
Well, I mean, they technically you go through you're certified and you go through a training program.
So you're not a federal employee. You're like an independent contractor then?
Kind of. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the rules can be different from one park to another park, and that's where Game and Fish, we've gone with a very specific plan to allow citizen hunters to be able to have a hunt and to retrieve the game, because that's another issue. One of the proposals that's put on the table is to just lay waste, which is fundamentally violates every premise of the North American model. The commission is opposed to it, and we've made that very clear to the park that is an unacceptable option.
Well, to me, that's consistent. I think the people that are anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, anti-firearm, they want to make guns as obsolete and useless as possible. And so if people go out and hunt and they, take home food, and they use the animal, it undermines their narrative that no good could come out of guns. And so they have to make it as useless as possible. So I think that's just part of the whole left anti-gun thing.
You're right. And the idea that that there's not qualified hunters in Arizona who will do it for free.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
At their expense. And
Well,
by the way,
people like me would pay to do it. I'd pay to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll write the check today.
The very people who fund conservation. So it's not a complicated problem to solve.
No, it's not.
It's actually a very simple problem to solve. And Don and I were talking about it before. And if it were to arrive at that kind of conclusion by the park to try to manage the bison, obviously we'll come knocking on your door saying we'd like to have a conversation about why that's the state's wildlife. It's not the federal government's wildlife, and we'd like to be able to manage them under the
did that come
North
down,
American model.
What decision was that?
Well, it hasn't come down yet. It's one of the options they have on the table.
Well, I thought we had
We've made it clear that's not
a DNA study, and they were, I don't remember if it was a few months ago.
Oh, you mean related to what they are?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as
Actually,
yeah. See, this is one of the other. So there are very few pure bison in the United States because they've had interaction with domestic cattle across the country, and they have for hundreds of years.
absolutely.
They're buffalo. They are bison. And
Look, nobody called them bison until Obama did. And I've tried to explain to you numerous times. They're buffalo. We didn't have bison soldiers. We had buffalo soldiers, right?
cacti.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Tomato. Okay.
But they are, and they should be, and they're part of Arizona's heritage, and they can be managed very effectively. Again, we need herds of, we need a herd up there of 200 to 250. That's what the landscape can handle, and this problem can be easily solved. And you don't want them in the park because the park's also managing for other endangered plants and those kinds of things and that's why they need to be moved out of the park.
No Mexican square-headed garter snakes up there.
There are a large number of endangered species, both plant and animal, that exist, and that's
Sure.
why you got to move the herd out of the park.
Well, that was one of talking with the superintendent is, look, why do we have to go do another EIS? We've got study after study after study up there on all the damage they're doing. I mean, if you want to look and see the damage, you want to do a study, go take some pictures.
Well, that's why
Take the pictures of the fence, the water holes that are mauled, and everything else.
You don't need more study.
Come on. And
that's why at the end of the day, I personally believe, this is Kurt's personal opinion, that it will require legislative action to force the park to allow us to go in and manage them like we manage all wildlife. And Senator McCain and Senator Flake have introduced that legislation before, and
Correct.
I'm sure it'll have to be introduced again.
Again,
well, new Congress, so we'll have to
New president.
February 1st. Here we go.
Dynamics change.
Wow.
But we're going to get there, Don.
We're going to get there. Or am I going to live long enough?
Hopefully you'll live long enough to be one of those guys that puts in for that hunt.
I just want to put in for the hunt.
Right.
That's it. And that's going to be hunt unit number 48.
That's right.
That's okay.
Unit 48.
I'm good. All righty. You've been a busy guy. When we come back, I want to talk to you and see where I can buy one of those jackets. That is very cool.
The Folda Gap, baby.
Yeah, okay. I'm Don McDowell.
I'm Kurt Davis.
And
I'm the Burno.
There we go. We'll be right back.
Last night I heard this politician talking about his brand new mission. Liked his plans, but they came undone when it got around to guiding guns.
All righty. We're back. Appreciate you guys staying with us. Mark Barnovich, our Attorney General's in the house. We've been talking with Kurt Davis about wolves on the landscape in Arizona. You've been pretty instrumental in holding the feds, Fish and Wildlife Service, accountable. What do you see on the landscape as we wrap up 2016, move into 2017?
Oh, I'm sorry, Don. No, yeah, well,
no texting.
I apologize. I was checking my fantasy football team.
There we go.
No offense.
No, we're boycotting the 49ers.
Oh, we can't stand the 49ers.
No, I'll tell you what, patriotism does not stop at the ballpark.
That whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. And I think it was actually Snoop Dogg, the rapper, that said, Kaepernick needs to make a decision. Does he want to be a social activist or does he want to play in the NFL? Because really, you can't do both effectively. Yeah, just do one or the other. But that's not what you asked me. You asked me about the Mexican.
In either case, let me finish that up. He's second string, loser regardless.
Yeah. Yes.
I was going to say, based by his performance, it sounds like he's choosing the latter.
Well,
yeah.
And in part, the problem with Kaepernick is that it's not just that he's going to take a knee. He wants to protest. This is my issue today with a lot of these folks. There was the woman, for example, on the U.S. women's soccer team who was going to do the same protest. And then she got mad because the coach said, well, we're not going to go out for the national anthem. And then she's like, but I didn't get a chance to do my protest. And so to me, that was an indication that a lot of this stuff is about the people doing it, not necessarily about their so-called causes. That's one.
Exactly.
And two, with Kaepernick, what I didn't like, I mean, I understand, this is, we're trying to make this a more perfect union, and, it's not perfect, but this is still the greatest country in the world, and if anyone's had any real life experience, as my family has, living under communism, where, people tell you what jobs you can have, they tell you what, you can't practice your religion freely, you can't own a gun, you will understand what true tyranny is. And for him, for example, to like praise Castro and, they've got a great education and healthcare system and ridicule us, it just shows you how, really ignorant he is. And so I think that, and that's I think it's a bigger problem. And this is not even the question you asked, but it's a bigger problem about this country today and the education system and what kids are being taught. And so much of their brains are being filled with, I would call leftist center or leftist propaganda.
Absolutely.
And they just don't understand. And can I give you one quick anecdote on this?
Go
I know this is
for
not
it.
what you're talking about, but
it's all about yours.
Before the election, one of my best friends I grew up with, Don, his kid goes to a school in Scottsdale, very, fairly affluent neighborhood. And this was before the election. And I was talking to him, and his son were very, very hardcore Donald Trump supporters. And I asked him, I said, well, what about the rest of the kids in your school? Where are they at? And he's like, oh, well, most of them liked Bernie Sanders. And I was like, really? Do they know that that's contrary to their parents' interest? And I said, why do kids living in Scottsdale that, don't have to work when they're seniors in high school or, worry about college? He's like, well, a lot of them feel like, if we go to school or college, we're giving back to this country, so the country should have to pay for our education. And that there's certain guarantees, like in Europe, you're guaranteed all these health care and all these other things that really we're the greatest country in the world, so we should be able to do the same. And I said, well, do you understand that, first of all, there's like huge waiting lines for health care. Second of all, there's huge unemployment. So you guys can advocate for all that, but you guys are all going to be unemployed when you're out of school. And somebody has to pay for this. Do you guys not understand this stuff? Like, your parents work hard.
Yeah, they're shelling out $65,000, $75,000.
The money doesn't come from thin air, but to me, it was just a snapshot of a generation that is so used to getting everything they want. They don't understand the connection between hard work and value, or the fact that if you want something in life, you have to work for it. They're just so used to getting it. And I think that the day after the election, I was joking with one of my friends, and there was this whole meltdown between like Katy Perry and all these other folks. I go, this is what happens when everyone gets a participation trophy. No one is used to losing. And so there's a bunch of people their entire life that were used to getting everything they wanted. When they threw a temper tantrum in the corner, mom or dad came over and, took them to Baskin Robbins or gave them something, or, when their soccer team lost 15-0, whatever, they still got a trophy and orange slices. And so they're just used to always getting everything they want, and they cannot handle adversity or defeat. And that goes back to my whole point about people like Kaepernick. I think that they're soft. I think that they haven't fully thought through these ideas that they're promulgating, that some liberal professor, when he was a freshman or sophomore in college, told them that the United States is some imperialistic, whatever country, and that's what he believes. And no one's, been able to like show him why he's wrong.
Well, the way the NFL ratings are dropping, my best guess is they're going to deal with him soon.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Our deal on Thanksgiving, traditionally is a big football day.
Yeah.
We had a rule. When you come in the house, you put your cell phone in the bucket, and we're going to spend family time, and we're not going to watch football.
Well, here's part of my big thing, Don, and whether it's the NFL, basketball, we're seeing a lot of these protests, everything else. I just wonder if, like, let's say, for example, if someone in the NBA had a shirt on with a firearm that said "Guns save lives" and you can have my gun when you pry for my cold dead hand. Do you think they'd be like, all right, he's expressing his First Amendment rights? Or do you think if when Tim Tebow was playing, if he went to the center of the field and got in the fetal position to protest abortion and said, I'm pro-life and we need to save babies in this country, do you think the NFL would be like, all right, he's making a social statement. Way to go.
Yeah.
And that's the reality is that I think that what bothers me is the hypocrisy that it's okay to protest or say certain things, but then you can't stand up for other things. And I am a firm believer that that's why the election turned out the way it did, because I think there's a lot of people in this country that felt like they can't say I'm pro Second Amendment. They can't say that I have traditional values. They can't say that they love their country. There was almost a ridicule and a scorn, and I think people were just, there's other people out there that believe that America is the greatest country in the world, and that they want us to kick ass, and so
isn't it great being able to say that stuff again?
Oh yeah.
Can I say that, Don? I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have the annual Dumb Bass Award, so it's cool.
Yes.
With a B.
Yes, I understand, but I use the A just so we're clear. Hopefully.
Hey, if you say it fast enough, it comes out dumbass word. So
it's an invasive species. I mean,
yes.
Bernie Sanders supporters. Yeah.
You know what they say about bass holes?
Yeah.
It's a great place to fish.
Okay, let's change gears. Talk about the wolves.
Oh, I'm sorry, we got off subject. That's the way our conversations go.
That's okay. It's all good.
Anyway, so we filed lawsuit. One of the things that historically has happened with environmental groups is what we've seen historically is they do what's called the sue and settle strategy. They'll sue over something, say that you aren't enforcing this, or you need to list the species, and then a very sympathetic federal government will come in and basically give them everything they want. What we did is we wanted to intervene, and we wanted to be part of that discussion. So we got involved in the lawsuits involving the Mexican gray wolf, which I know, as we note, and I know you've talked about this before, but it's the Mexican gray wolf. 90% of its native habitat was in Mexico.
Absolutely.
And one of the problems that we had even from the beginning so the federal government's not even involved, or the environmentalists isn't even involved in conversations with Mexico about how to reintroduce the wolf into its native habitat. But what we did is we filed a lawsuit. We've been successful thus far. We've asked for a federal recovery plan where we can be part of the process. And so they are supposed to have a new plan in place by fall of 2017. So this year there should be a new plan, and what we're shooting for is I think approximately about 300 total wolves versus the 1,100 or so the environmentalists wanted.
Personal opinion, how is the new Secretary of the Department of Interior going to play into this one way or another?
Very, very important, but I do not know how the new Secretary of Interior, what actions he's going to take. We don't know.
Well,
let me give you one kind of counter to that. Like, for example, Scott Pruitt has just been nominated to be the Environmental Protection Agency head.
That's the new Darth Vader.
Scott Pruitt is someone that I know personally. He's a friend of mine. He's a mentor. When I was running in the primary,
he endorsed you, didn't he?
He endorsed me in the primary before very few Republicans did, and he came out, did an event for me, and he's a great person. And just because he's had the gall to question or ask questions about, well, is this science really settled or not? Should we have some more conversations? Just because he's asked some questions on that, people have made all sorts of spurious allegations against him.
Sure.
They've accused him of all sorts of stuff. And but the reality is that he understands that there has to be a balance between protecting the environment and making sure that we're not stifling our economy and costing people thousands of
common sense.
yes, thousands of jobs. Yeah. So anyway, so when it comes to someone like General Pruitt, Scott Pruitt, my colleague for the EPA, I can unaffirmatively say that I've had conversations in private and public. he is who he is. He's not fake, and he will do what he says he's going to do, and he will have a good critical eye and just not accept one side or the other, whatever they say. So, which I think is a great quality to have. But as far as generally overall in Interior, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the nominee personally or anything, so I can't say, oh, he's going to be great or he's going to be terrible.
Well, you know, we've got a whole different ideology with this guy versus Secretary Jewell and certainly Dan Ash. Dan Ash was on one of the
head of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for
but there was some National Geographic thing on last night. He was talking. I wanted to throw my milkshake at the TV again.
Yeah.
So it's just
he's already got his next job, which is unfortunately he's going to be working for some of the litigants.
Oh yeah.
But the good news is, and Don, for me, I most interested in who is the appointment to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I think that's
the key thing, and that's job. One Secretary Zinke's going to make.
And that's a White House and. I mean, the president will be involved in that decision, as they usually are, but I have no doubt will be. And the good news is I think there are a couple of Arizonans that may be on that list for consideration.
Certainly.
The bottom line
Davis?
is no, not Kurt Davis. The idea is can we get
Look, I submitted his name to the Trump transition. I did to the team. So look, you need a secretary? It's this guy.
And they quickly dispatched that. But I appreciate it, Don. But I think the idea that we could have somebody in there that understands the state's role, and I do want to put a plug in as a commissioner. This attorney general is more involved and has already committed more time and resources to these critical issues of the management of Arizona's wildlife, and I would argue, than already all of our previous AGs combined.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's been
you're right.
Well, thank you, Kurt.
It's been awesome. His office, he's got some really talented people who are up for the fight.
You've got an election coming up, do you not?
2018.
18.
Don't stress me out this early.
When are you going to start that? I've already got my endorsement ready.
Yes. It's one of the things about politics that I absolutely hate, Don, is that in the old days, Barry Goldwater used to say people can disagree, but they shouldn't be disagreeable. Nowadays, if someone disagrees with you, they try to destroy you, try to destroy your reputation. Sure. And that's one thing that I think is really, really unfortunate. And quite frankly, watching my good friend Bill Montgomery, when Bill was up for re-election, and watching those ads, some outside liberal group poured in more than $1 million to attack him.
George Soros.
Yeah, and it was really despicable because Bill is nationwide. Maricopa County is one of the toughest offices in the entire country when it comes to sex offenders, anywhere in the country. And for them to attack Bill on that was just so ridiculous. And but it just goes to show you that the left, especially, they're fully engaged, and they're going to go after people if they consider their enemies. And so I think sometimes people that are on the right or people that are conservative or libertarian leaning, they're not always as fully engaged. And the left is very much more organized. And I think that's because a lot of folks, even the president, they were community organizers. This is what they're used to doing. They're used to, they've read Sal Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, not just talked about it. They know you define, demonize, and then destroy your opponent. That's what they do. And so I think that anybody in politics should be ready for the onslaught. I can control only what I can control. I do my job the best I can. I think we do the right thing in the right way.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's really unfortunate though that people can't have genuine disagreements. If they do, they want to say that somehow you're evil or you're bad or you're the worst thing since I don't know, what's the worst thing in the world, Mr. Davis? I don't know what.
Destroying guns.
Yes.
That happened in Tucson.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Well, as you know, and I don't know if that's a segue, that our state. First, let me start, and you've heard me say this before, since even when I was running on. I am a huge believer in the rule of law. What makes this country so great is the rule of law. Every tin horn dictator in the world has a constitution or laws guaranteeing all sorts of rights. The Constitution of the former Soviet Union protected, speech and protest and, provided all sorts of rights. Hugo Chavez had great laws and statutes, but they meant nothing. They were words on paper. What makes this country great is this concept of the rule of law. And then when it's the law, you have to enforce the law as it is, not as you may or may not want it to be. So that's always been my basic premise. No matter what the law is, we have a statutory obligation as the AG to enforce it, whether it's immigration or whether it's what's going on in Tucson. The legislature passed a law that basically said that cities, local governments, cannot destroy firearms, even if they were firearm-seizing crimes. The legislature over the last 15 years has passed 2 statutes related specifically to not allowing cities to regulate firearms in this manner. So the city of Tucson has had a policy, at least since 2013 when the state law passed regarding destruction of firearms. They've had a policy of destroying all firearms that they seize. We know that there's been more than 4,000 in the last few years that have been destroyed by the city. And our position is that, one, the rule of law requires that they follow the state law, which is what the legislature said. And 2, that this principle, especially when it comes to the Second Amendment, there's a bigger and broader principle here about the individual's right to own arms. And the more guns we have in Arizona is actually a good thing. And this is why this is kind of a left versus right argument. To us, we see that if there's more of a supply of firearms here in the state, the legislative findings were that you have more firearms available, mean more people can protect themselves. It also means that the overall cost of firearms should be less because there's more supply. So it's an important principle, and I'm sure that the long knives from the left are going to be out because they see this as some bigger, broader issue. But as I said, for us, this is about the rule of law, what the law requires, and the legislature passed a law that said if I get a complaint from a legislator, which we did, a formal complaint, that we have to take action, and that's what we did. So, it's something that we had to do.
Are they going to do it again?
Well, we're in court.
Do they get it?
No, so here's the deal. So we gave them an opportunity. We had a similar issue with Sholo on an issue, but we were able to resolve it. So we didn't move forward. The way the state statute works, the legislature passed, is that if Tucson loses, they lose their shared state revenue, which is, more than $100 million. So it's a huge blow. So it's a huge gamble for the city of Tucson. They could have changed the ordinance. We said, hey, we think this ordinance is not consistent with state law. Can you change it? Because we don't want to. We're not in the business of second guessing you. We don't want to sue you, but we're going to have to because that's what the law requires. And they basically said, pound sand, we're Tucson, we can do whatever we want to do.
Berkeley South.
And so, so we were forced to file a lawsuit, and we filed it in the state Supreme Court. So it's filed in the state Supreme Court. The justices of the state Supreme Court will take it up when they have a conference in January and then set a schedule. Now, the way that the state law was written, the court is supposed to give priority to this case, but it's judges, so we don't know. I mean, we can't force them to take this as their first case or anything. But I think that everyone understands this is an important issue. It's a new issue. There's not a lot of case law on it because it's a new statute. And so we will see how the court responds with it ultimately. But it's, it's a big gamble for the city of Tucson, I think. And they're making this. They're trying to make this about their principles, and of course our principles are about the rule of law and Second Amendment. So,
but they're also playing with unfortunately with their taxpayers' well-being to try to make a political statement, and that's the most unfortunate situation. I mean, that the law is, as the AG says, the law is the law, and if you don't like the law, go change the law.
Interesting.
And they could attempt to change it.
Okay. What else are we looking at in Arizona? We're talking to the Border Patrol, as I mentioned to Mr. Davis. We'll be taking a run down there. I know you guys are looking at southern Arizona with all the guys coming across. What we're doing is trying to draw some parallels to the illegal crossings, the drug issue, and we hunt down there. So we're looking at various hunt units in southern Arizona being on a scale of, let's categorize them. A is a good place to hunt, B is not so good, and C stands for you really need to be careful in these units. So we'll be talking to the Border Patrol on that. Have you had any more thoughts after your tour last year?
Yes. I mean, I think that every sovereign country has to ensure that its borders are secure. And I know that we have the technology and the means to do it. So with the election results, I think it's clear that, there's a mandate that people want the border secure. Now, but I've always been a believer, that immigration is a net good thing for this country.
Sure,
legal
absolutely.
immigration. I'm a product of legal immigration, and I believe that it's a net benefit. We have Mexico's huge.
So you came in from the Canadian side?
Okay.
Yeah.
About. No, we came from the Far East side, the Eastern European side. But but my point is that, and we have a lot of trade, a lot of important issues with Mexico. That being said, Mexico's southern border is secure, and they make sure it's secure in every nation, and we're starting to see the ramifications of that even in Europe. Look what's happening in West Germany, what's happening in Germany today, where even people there are frustrated with the amount of folks that are coming in from the Middle East. So it's a huge crisis, and so folks need to we need to make sure that we have the border secure, and it's not. And the reality is it's not. There's whole spaces that I've been down there that are wide open. So we need to secure it. I think you can do it in a way that's even electronically, like what the Israelis do with electronic fencing and with monitoring. There's ways to do it where you don't need necessarily a 30-foot wall, but there is ways to secure the border. I think that's something we need to do. One of the things too, part of it also is that our office has been very aggressive in trying to go after the cartels and smugglers. And since I've been AG, the amount of cartel or drug smuggling cases that our Southern Arizona office has gone up fourfold, 4 times. So we're really being really aggressive and going after folks that are trying to smuggle drugs into this country and pollute our neighborhoods and undermine our quality of life. So, that's part of our approach as well. And obviously I think that some of these issues, you got to have conversations with folks, even south of the border with your Mexican counterparts, and work together. And we've been doing a lot of that when it relates to like money laundering and human trafficking. So,
how do we approach from a state level and a federal level the 75-mile contiguous border with Mexico and the O'odham nation?
That's a really good question. It's a really good question.
Well, right now I may not have an answer, and that's okay. We've had reports of one of our well-known sheep hunters was down there in that neighborhood 3 weeks. Every day for 3 weeks they saw traffickers sneaking across. They found catches of food and water in washes and strategic location for these guys. They had a hunter putting a spot and stalk on a bighorn sheep, watching, these guys were watching the hunter, trying to direct him in with radio traffic. He comes face to face with a drug trafficker. They both go, ah! The hunter, God love him, kept a hold of his rifle. The drug guy dropped his AK and ran. So, it's like, wait a minute. We got a lot of stuff going down there, which has precipitated us looking into Mike Valdez hunts Southern Arizona. They had some hair-raising tales down there on a recent mule deer hunt south of I don't remember. I think it was south of Bisbee or Sierra Vista, one of those southern.
Well, I've had those conversations with some of the ranchers, farmers down there, and once again, it's no one. People should be secure in their homes, and in these stories you hear about people breaking into their houses,
sure.
Or they wake up one morning and there's 15 people outside their front door.
Yep.
I mean, it's not fair to them, and it's not fair for all of us, and it undermines the rule of
law.
law.
We're getting more and more cases of guys going up and established camps. They've come back to camp after a day in the field and stuff's gone.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, so it's obviously still a very serious problem, but even when it comes to the Tohono O'odham, that's an issue where the federal government's going to have to be involved, because I know when I was state gaming director, we had some dealings with them on various issues, and there's obviously the issue with the casino in the West Valley now, where they're very, very tough negotiators, and they believe very strongly in their sovereignty, and so it's really going to take the federal government to be involved in that, and the state.
Honestly, I don't see anything happening down there. So,
If there's a will, there's a way, as the voice of moderation here.
sniper stands.
There's a
Yeah,
way.
just
It's
say
in
it.
their interest, too, to secure the border.
All righty, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get this thing wrapped up and get on with our day. I'm Don McDowell.
I'm Mark Brnovich.
Kurt Davis.
We'll be back. All righty, we're back. One quick question before we change gears. We're going to bring our good friend James Guggenauer in, get a perspective from up north on how you're doing. But did you ever think you'd see Democrats protesting in the halls of Congress?
The 60s style.
Yeah, no, I know you had the Buffalo Springfield on. I just want to make sure you know that was Stephen Stills of Buffalo Springfield. That wasn't Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead.
Yeah,
so
no.
I know you guys are probably music illiterates, but that's why. But yes, I shouldn't call you music illiterates because you're going to make them disassemble an AK-47. So I will stop there with that. But no, you know what I think. I think there is a whole segment of the left that loves to be angry. They're happiest when they're angry.
Absolutely.
And so this is like their chance to be angry. And it's so interesting, Don. I was watching the other night. I saw Scott Baio, and I don't know if you saw the story about Scott Baio's being accosted at some concert with his daughter, which is ridiculous. And I heard him, and he didn't want to talk about the incident. But one of the things he said is that the left, so much of the left, the hardcore left. And I've got liberal friends I grew up with, and he's talking about his agent's very liberal Democrat. But there's a segment of the left that just really has an entitlement mentality, and they can't. He
made that point.
Yes, and they can't accept this notion that they lost the election because everyone loves what they're doing, and they don't comprehend. So when a Republican wins, it's not because someone believes we believe those values or that they made a better case or whatever. It's always something else. So they always have to have some sort of conspiracy theory as to why this person won and not their favorite lefty candidate. And so when they don't win, once again, what they do, it's so disingenuous because I told some of my liberal friends who were all up, ginned up about this. I said, look, give him a chance. Give him a chance. Weren't you the same people?
It's going to be better. Yes.
Weren't you the same people telling Republicans 8 years ago that, hey, the sun will still rise and, he's the president and you got to respect the office? Well, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander.
Absolutely. I'm going to close it out with this. I was looking at Martin Sheen, and it looks like he has made a transition, some metamorphosis. He looks just like Al Franken. Just like him. James, what do you say about that from downtown Payson, where it's really frosty this morning?
Hey, it is. Good morning, Don, Attorney General Brnovich, and Commissioner Davis.
Good
great
morning.
Show this morning, Don.
Yeah, you're hanging out with the guys today, buddy.
17 degrees up here. It is frozen tundra out there.
Nice.
Oh, it's nice.
Even the dog didn't want to run this morning.
All right. Hey, we've got just a few minutes. Sorry for being late. We're running pretty hard this morning. Have you got any thoughts on the wolf issue as it turned out this past week in Tucson and in Young for the Attorney General or Kurt Davis?
Yeah, more this continual frustration. It seems the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, held another one of their what we call non-disclosable public meetings in Young on Thursday. At the last minute, I think they realized that they hadn't informed anybody. They literally were making phone calls on Thursday afternoon to the press and some other people up there near Young to show up at the meeting. So a few ranchers got there, and some of the media got there, and the report was there was no new information that was given, and that none of the specific questions that any of the ranchers had, none of those got answered either.
And I understand Sherry Barrett let the cat out of the bag that there's 4 wolves up on the White Mountains. Is that correct?
That was the public statement, that there was a vote from the White Mountain Apache Indian Reservation. This happened also on Thursday to exit the Mexican gray wolf program. So nobody knows what the next step is or what that's going to do, but apparently the report was from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that there's only 4 wolves on the reservation, so it shouldn't be too big of an impact.
4. Okay. That's like all of a sudden we grow 30,000 elk. All right, I get it.
Yeah. So it's the same, continual type frustration. And then we understand that there was another meeting that was held down in Tucson, and now the U.S. Fish and Wildlife is going to invite the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, and the National Park Service to join them in managing the Mexican gray wolf
Yep,
program.
there we go with more state partners again. Gotta love it.
Some of the lands that they plan to release.
All right, real quick, what's happening over on the Mother Lake? Anybody catching fish?
Hey, just like your song said, there's something happening here.
Yeah, buddy.
Winter conditions are setting in. The report is good to very good. The fish are scattered. I mean, they're catching them everywhere from 5 feet to 50 feet. So crankbaits and jerkbaits shallow, drop shots on main lake points down to 15 feet, and then a spoon if you want to go 30, 40, or 50 feet.
Too deep.
Water temperature is barely reaching 60 degrees. It continues to go down. The good news is, with all the rain that we had in the watershed, both the Tonto and the Salt Creek and the Salt River this morning are flowing at over 300 cubic feet per second. So there's a lot of water going into the lake.
Okay, a couple weeks ago, you were going to do a little bit of homework. How many gallons does that equate to?
I didn't do that.
Come on, James.
It's a lot of water. Hey, so, experienced anglers know when that water starts flowing in like that, I guarantee you that tomorrow morning, anybody fishing Roosevelt Lake is either going to be up where the Tonto enters or where the Salt enters. That's where the bait fish are going to go. That's where the bass are going to go.
All right, we're going to get back to, can you hang with us and close this show out?
Sure.
Okay. One thing I want to tell everybody, we didn't have roll call today, but we did lose one of our own longtime anglers. Donnie McBride passed away over at Roosevelt Resort on Tuesday morning. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have more on that next week or perhaps the following week. So we don't know what happened to Donnie, but anyway, he's going to be sorely missed. He's just one of those characters. You're either fishing with him or fishing against him. In either case, it's a good thing. So.
Yep. You were laughing for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Well, that and the one thing you can count on with Donnie McBride, he's always bitching and moaning about something. So it's always good. Telegraph, telephone, or tell Donnie McBride, man, it's all over. All right, we've got just a few minutes. Both you guys, what can we count on from your office moving into 2017?
This is Brnovich. We are going to continue to enforce the rule of law. And I know some people have asked that now that there's a new administration, we filed a lot of lawsuits against the Obama administration on everything from ozone rules to some of the new EPA carbon rules. And we're going to keep our.
Are we ready for monuments?
Well, our litigation team is, looking at that issue. And, you've heard me say before, Don, that when you can control people's property, you can control their livelihoods. When you control their livelihoods, you control the way they vote. So these are very, very important issues. And, sometimes they're very, very tough. And, we have limited resources in our office, but we did create that first ever federalism unit, and so we've been involved in everything from, some of these endangered species lawsuits to filing lawsuits over, these job killing carbon rules, the ozone rules we're the lead state on. So there's a lot of litigation we are still involved in, and we will make sure that we're still engaged in issues, everything from I don't know if you recently saw, our office upheld the state identity theft statute. We successfully argued at the Ninth Circuit. So, we've been very, very engaged.
You've
in
been
protecting,
busy guys down there.
Well, that's because we got a great crew. People can always visit my Twitter is at General Brnovich or at Mark for AZ. Our website is www.azag.gov. And so we're doing a lot of stuff, and even consumer protection issues. The number of complaints has gone up by a few thousand. Some at AG, and I don't think that's because there's more crooks and cheats out there. It's because we're making an effort to let people know that if you've been taken advantage of, if you've been scammed, contact our office.
And Commissioner Davis, what's happening in the department from the commission side moving into 17?
I think you'll see more shift towards more electronic opportunities, meaning more communication, more opportunity to use electronic methodologies to apply and all those things, more customer-friendly efforts.
I had a question earlier in the week. There are some underwater-type drones. Are those going to be looked at from the Department for Fishing?
The ones the Chinese stole?
Oh, you mean
I'm sorry.
Similar.
The use of technology.
Right.
I think you know the department has a working group, the commission does, and a working group on all forms of technology related to fair chase. And protecting the fundamentals of fair chase is one of the most important things I think the commission will actually be doing in 2017. Because, there's a myriad of issues that we have to try to stay in front of.
Well, we've had AquaView and the underwater cameras, and there's been flaps one way or another. How long ago was that? 4 years ago, James?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there's a new underwater, for lack of a better term, a drone, a submarine with a downsized version of a GoPro and a phone app,
Right.
so you can see where to cast your lure.
Right.
Because there's a big bass over there by that smoke.
No, that's exact. There's actually a working group that's all they do now is deal with new forms of technology and then make recommendations so that we can stay in front of them. Everything, as you know, from self-shooting rifles.
Oh yeah.
And so to ensure that the sanctity of our sport is protected and that fair chase is always the standard of which we use as sportsmen.
All right.
And women, Don.
We got to get this thing wrapped up and move on to the next thing. I want to thank you, AGB. I like that, AGB.
The Burno.
Yeah, for doing what you do. Commissioner Davis, congratulations on your new appointment, and we'll be seeing you at the commission meetings. And James, thank you for...
And Don, I think you're getting an award in January.
I'm going to be there. Yep.
Hey, thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody.
All right, thank you, James. All righty. You guys take your kids fishing, hug your bass boat, and we're out of here.
Merry Christmas.
Absolutely.
Well, sun lights are on. It's me and the boys gonna shake